Welcome, listeners. I am your host, Jonathan Yamasaki, for Go Entrepreneur Yourself, a podcast where we bring you local entrepreneurs and leaders from around the country to share their story about adversity, triumph, and their business. Today, we bring you Cesar Aguilar, a friend of mine from Northern Arizona University, and also a confidant, someone that is really involved in the community here in Phoenix, Arizona. He's currently the governing board, on the governing school board for Balsz School District. He is the Executive Director of Arizona Student Association, which we are going to be talking about in the interview today. He's done he's been a field organizer for Elizabeth Guzman, for Virginia House of Delegate. He's been a field organizer for the Arizona Democratic Party. He's done a lot of work here in the community to help really push a lot of democratic agendas forward and helping to consult other campaign managers to help them in their campaign. So Cesar Aguilar, thank you for coming on the podcast today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So we like to get this episode started with the Fast Five. So these are questions that you can answer to the best of your ability, as short as you can. If you don't know the answer, it's okay. We can just answer to what comes to mind first. So the first question is, who is your favorite politician?
My favorite politician, I would have to say that I would have to go more local. I would say what Arizona Ed Pastor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so Ed Pastor was the one of the first Latino congressmen of Arizona, first Latino congressman of Phoenix, Arizona, and kind of just paved the way for everybody else here in the state of Arizona. And his family has been involved in politics, and so yeah, when you talk to a lot of Latinos in the state of Arizona, they definitely give the respects to Ed Pastor, Congressman.
Awesome. Thank you. Rest in peace, Ed Pastor. Yeah. So what is the first thing you're gonna do when this pandemic is over?
Oh man, I think the first thing will be it's weird because I'm already back at work, but I feel like we're still not fully back at work. Yeah. So I think be actually back at work. I don't know if that makes sense, but I feel like for most people working at home it makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense to me because you don't get to experience office talk. You have everybody there,
yep.
And you get to have those good conversations.
Yeah.
How's the weather?
Yeah, well, and it's I feel like what's that saying, that you feed off of people's
energies?
Yeah, well, not energy, energies, but also most of communication is body language, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like online you're not really getting that body language.
That's true.
Yeah, and so I feel like that's where I'm missing, where I'm not getting my actual work because I'm not getting that from people.
Right, that's true. And then tell me something that's true that almost nobody agrees with you on.
Oh man, this is gonna be a weird one. So I was recently convinced by my cousin, who's a high schooler, about this, and it was that it's kind of dumb that the United States uses toilet paper, and he was telling me that we should be using bidets, and I was like, what? No, we don't do that. And he was like, well, it's eco-friendly and it makes sense. Why would you want to wipe your butt with paper? When you can just clean it off with water. And I was just makes sense, man. And I feel like it was hard it wasn't hard, but it got him some time to convince me. And I was like, this makes perfect sense. Why are we using toilet paper?
Yeah, there's other countries
especially after the pandemic. I was just everyone uses a damn bidet.
I bet you the sales on bidets went really high because of this pandemic, so there's no toilet paper. What do you clean first, your car or your workspace?
Ooh, my car.
Okay.
Yeah, my desk is a mess. I kind of just stack everything up in my car, and I have to have my car cleaned.
That's good. And then what is the funniest thing that happened to you recently?
Funniest thing that happened to me recently. Oh.
Or it could be something that happened to your family or somebody that you know that you witnessed.
So there was one time when I was in college, and I had gotten a banana, and I had also had my phone in my hand, in the same hand. And so there was this guy that worked at the cafeteria, and he just kept looking at me, and I was like, "What is he looking at me all weird?" And he thought that I was talking through a banana, like while I was holding my hand. Like that was like the funniest thing. I can't think of anything.
No, that's so using a banana as a cell phone.
Yeah, that's what he thought, but I had like both in one hand.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that. So that was the Fast Five with Cesar Aguilar. So we're gonna get started talking about the organization, Arizona Student Association. So walk me through how you got involved with the Arizona Student Association and also how ASA came about.
Yeah, so I first got involved in the Arizona Students Association my freshman year of college, and I was friends with Jonathan there this time, so he could probably connect. But one of the biggest things that I saw was that after my first semester, we had finished our first semester going into our second semester, a lot of my friends that I was in STAR with, our summer program that to help first generation students go through college, ended up dropping out. And it was just crazy to me because it was like we had just got in, right? And when I would text them and I would be like, "Hey man, like what happened? Like I haven't seen you in a while." They were like, "Yeah, like I just can't afford college." And I thought with financial aid and like me paying and working so much, I thought I'd be able to afford it, and I can't afford it. And so I was just like, it just, those things just made me mad too, because within the process myself, like I come from like a middle income family as well, but I was also struggling financially to go to college, right? Mm-hmm. Like I was having those difficult calls with my family and being like, "Hey, like, the cost of college is like impacting us." And so it was a little crazy. And I also wanted to be a history secondary education teacher. That's what I was like studying originally. And my biggest thing is like I wanted to make an impact on young people's lives. I wanted to teach them history. And I knew going into this field that, I'm not going to make a lot of money doing this because it's just how it is, right? And so when you start to like think of all this stuff, it made me upset because I think education is the biggest equalizer for most people, right? It's the merits of it builds your merits. Like mm-hmm. You can be whoever you want to be, and if you work hard, you study what the field that you want to study in, and you're the expert at it, you can make it out. You can make good money, and you can do what you dream of doing. And it made me mad because the one thing that I realized was that education had become the biggest barrier for being an equalizer for young people, because the cost of college was just not affordable and it wasn't accessible to everyone.
Yeah.
And so I ran into this organization, the Arizona Students Association, and they were registering students to vote on campus. And I was like, "Hey, like I want to do this. Like I think this is a way to start creating change." And from there, I became an intern. Then I became an organizer. Then I became like a regional director, and then a legislative director, and then I eventually became the executive director. The biggest reason why I got involved in it was just because, like, my biggest belief is that I think college should be free, like period. Mm-hmm. I think education should be free. We should not be having to pay for knowledge. And that's how I got involved in this organization. Has been around for over 40 years. It basically started with 3 college students at NAU, ASU, and U of A. They were the presidents of all 3 universities, and they got together and they said, let's make an organization that's like a student union at a statewide level, and let's advocate for student issues. Some of those issues, this was in 1974, they were advocating for the right to vote at 18 years old. The 26th Amendment, which gave students the right to vote at 18 years old, had still not been ratified. And so these leaders got together and they said, we're going to fight for this to be a United States fundamental right. We're getting our peers, our friends, or family are getting shipped off to fight in this war that we have no say in. This is during the 70s, 60s, and we need that right to vote so that we can stop these wars.
Right, that was pretty much the debate about how if we're sending us out to fight, and I think it was the Vietnam War, then why aren't we able to use our voice as power to make decisions?
Yeah, and it goes with everything else. Like, people use that argument to this day. Like, how is it that you can send me off to war at 18, but I still can't drink a beer? Yeah. Like, how is it
you now smoke?
Yeah, you can
you smoke at 21.
Yeah. And so, like, it's a big argument people use today and I think it becomes like a cultural thing, right? Where, like, this is something that I hear all the time too, where people, I truly believe that the voting age should be lowered. I think as soon as you start paying taxes, you should have a right to, like, vote. And that was one thing that there's a lot of people that disagree with that. And I'm like, I think it's a cultural thing. Like, if I'm able to put my kid to work, or my kid is working at a young age, or just an individual is working at a young age, they deserve to have a voice in where their money's going, their taxpayer money's going. And so, yeah, the argument is pretty popular.
Describe the day-to-day process working at ASA as an executive director. What is it that you do? What is it that are your goals, especially during this election cycle, because we have the current presidential election for Donald Trump and former Vice President Joe Biden. So what is it, your mission and your job?
Yeah, so I'll give you a little more background about ASA. So we were created to advocate for student issues, college affordability, and college accessibility. Throughout the years, what we advocate has changed based on the needs of students, and we used to be funded directly through students. We were literally a student union, and so students used to pay at NAU, ACU, U of A, $2 off of their tuition used to come to us. So our budget used to look over like $500,000 a semester.
Wow.
Yeah, we were a pretty big organization. Like, we had over 100 interns. Like, we were doing a lot of stuff. We were pretty powerful in this state. And it got to a point where state legislators started noticing. It got to a point where administrators started noticing, and they were like, how is it that these students are overpowering us? And so the first thing that they started to do was attack our power. And the way they went about that was that they cut our way of collecting our fees, and that was through student tuition. So the state of Arizona passed a law where students' tuition could not go to a nonprofit organization, and so that's where they cut our funding. And so now today, a large portion of our funding comes from grants. So I am like a full-time grant writer. And I've kind of learned how grant funders think, what they want to hear, and then also giving them the outcome of what students are able to do, right? And a lot of it is just educating students on the political process, educating them on, okay, let's get your other peers to register to vote. Okay, why is it important to vote? Because you then have control over, you have a voice in your political system. You could then advocate for things that are, more pro-student. And I think for the most part, like a lot of our grant funders, they have a special passion for education, for students being vocal about what they believe in. And I think they see themselves a lot of times in like our students. And there are people that just take their students in our organization that just take off with it. And like grant funders thought that they're like, yeah, like that, you see that one individual, like they're going to be someone. They're the next, AOC, they're the next Barack Obama. And I think that's kind of what they see. So that's my day to day is just like literally grant funding, reporting, looking over operations, making sure that we're following the proposal that I put in. So a lot of the grants that we've been getting this year is just get out the vote or registering students to vote, and then now getting out the vote. And then this year, for the first time in over 40 years, we've endorsed candidates. So we're actually helping legislative candidates get elected.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So you are registered as a 501c4?
Yeah. So yeah, for a tax code, so there's 501c3s. C3s cannot get politically involved. They're just to educate for the most part. 501c4s they're considered like activists, nonprofits. You can be vocal about issues, but they have to be like issue based. And so for us, like our issue base is affordable and accessible higher education. This year we've included climate justice in that. We've included social justice in that. And so we've been diving into that too.
This episode is sponsored by our host, the Arizona Student Association, a nonpartisan student-led 501c4 nonprofit organization existing to represent the interests of all community college and public university students in the state of Arizona. For over 40 years, ASA has been the voice of Arizona students by focusing on grassroots organizing, registering students to vote, lobbying for affordable higher education, and training and developing student leaders. For more information on Arizona Student Association, please follow them on Instagram and Facebook. On Instagram, their handle is AZ Students. On Facebook, you could search them up by typing in Arizona Students 'Association, or check out their website at azstudents.org. Thank you. So then I want to get into how you get this funding, because similar to a nonprofit, it must be really hard to really get shareholders or investors, people to move an agenda that this purpose of this organization. So where do you find this funding, and how does one approach somebody for thousands of dollars in order to help?
From my experience, it's a lot of networking. When I first took over ASA, we were like on the last foot of this organization. Like, it got to a point where, I wasn't getting paid, but I was still doing this work because I believed in this organization. I believed in the mission of this organization, and it had become my side job. But it's just an entrepreneurship like mind thinking where you're just hustling, man. You're just like meeting people, networking, but also producing outcome. When I'm telling, grant funders, this is what I would like to do, and this is what we're currently doing, and it's the weirdest thing because they want you to do all this stuff without having money. And then they'll give you money once you already have like this whole program going without money. So it's the same thing like a business, right? Like a bank isn't going to loan you money because they already want to see that you're like making money,
right?
Even though like it takes money to make money, right?
Right.
That's how a nonprofit works. It's like they want to see you like put hundreds of free labor into this organization, and I think a lot of it is just like it's passion driven, money, where like you invest so much of your passion where you know what you can produce for how much, and you just keep doing it. So that for me, that's how it was. I was going to a bunch of conferences, just networking, and it was interesting. I would take I got some crazy advices, right? And then you fail, and then you learn from them.
Where do you go to network? Like what kind of conferences?
It was a lot of like youth organization national conferences that I would go to, and then just like alumni from this organization. Like this organization has existed for over 40 years, and our alumni network they're really connected. They're connected in Washington, D.C. Some of them are senators, congressmen. Some of them are they're elected officials, attorneys. Like they're all out there. And so a lot of these individuals who went through this organization, they would hook me up with other people and connect me with other people. And it was through that. But it was interesting, man. I remember, when you're young, I'm like going out there, and people would be like, okay, so like I would meet these individuals, and they're like, yeah, we love what you're doing, we love the work you're doing. Like, how can I help you? And then I would be like, well, I need some funding, like I'm kind of looking for some funding.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would kind of like chuckle and like laugh, And then there was one thing that this individual told me, and she was like, you did everything right. Like, you presented your organization right. You told me all the work you were doing. She's like, but that final ask, she's like, don't laugh. Oh. She's like, don't ever laugh when you're asking for money. She's like, you do it seriously. And she gave me this advice too. She's like, even if you don't have it going, act like you have it already running, and like you have it set up, and you'll get funded.
Right.
And that individual, she gave me money, and it was she gave me money, and we ended up doing some good work with it. And I've gone to like other conferences too, where like it's grant funding conferences. And there was one conference where this one individual, this is like a huge donor. Well, to me, it's a huge donor. It's like $50,000 or like more.
That's a lot for a non-profit. Yeah.
And this is what he tells me. He's like, he started off by telling us, what is your ideal grant donor? Like, who would you want to donate to your organization? And I was like, a young individual who has student debt, who also has a lot of money and like understands student debt, right? Mm-hmm. And because they would invest in like what I'm trying to like advocate for, because if they have student debt or had student debt, they get it. And it kind of gets you thinking like, okay, there are people who like, they want to be like grant funders. It's like a game to them. Like, they want to be known for this.
Right.
There's rich people problems. And then he gave me this other advice, and he's all like, you can get these, he's like, think of yourself like as a cheetah, right? And you're looking for food. He's like, you can feed off those mice. He's like, and those mice are like $5,000 or less grants. He's all like, but those mice are only going to fool you up for a little bit, right? You got to keep getting them, keep getting them. He's like, as a nonprofit, that's how it is. You're going to keep getting these $5,000. And those reporting are going to take a lot of your time, like executing the plan. All this stuff is going to take a lot of time, where it comes down to like, it's just a straight hustle all the time. Mm-hmm. And he's all like, but you want that gazelle. He's like, you want that gazelle, or you could fool yourself for a good month. And he's like, think about like that in terms of grant funding. And it was good advice. It was like,
and can you ever leverage from getting grants from like wealthy individuals or other big organizations? Can you ever leverage that to other grants proposals?
Oh yeah. Once you've been given money to do from one individual, another individual is more likely to donate to you.
So then I want to get into like the marketing piece of it, because obviously you get a lot of grants to help pay for labor, but maybe you also have volunteers. So how do you market out to those people that are maybe volunteering or joining your organization? And then how do you market out to, like, how do you build relationships with schools? Because I know you're focused at U of A, ASU, and NAU. Yeah. So let's start with first, how do you market out to those that are interested with ASA?
Yeah, so when I had taken over ASA, our chapters at our 3 universities were basically like dead. And so I had to pull an organization from scratch and kind of rebuild it. Mm-hmm. And so what I did is I started at the college that I had the most connections with, which was NAU. So I built a chapter there, got 5 individuals, created a club on campus, and then from there, I kind of like let them start recruiting for themselves or for their organization. Okay, nice. And then I went to ASU, did the same thing, started a club, started recruiting people from there. And then I went to U of A, and it was crazy. Like we didn't have much money, but I would take my car and I would drive down there and I would spend all day just flyering. And then I would get someone text or email me and just starts like that.
Nice.
Like you're just driving out there.
Now the people who are starting the organizations on campus, the clubs,
Yeah.
are they paid or are they like doing this out of volunteer?
So when I first started, all these individuals, none of us were paid. Like I wasn't even getting paid.
Mm-hmm.
I was just spreading a message.
Yeah.
and people were buying what I was selling, and they were also affected by what I was advocating for, and so they felt like they also needed to do something about it. And I'm a true believer that you should get paid for your work, and so I also think that experience is of value, right? And so there are some individuals who will come in and volunteer, and they'll put a lot of hours into it, and it gives them the best thing they'll ever have, like knowledge. It'll give them experience. It'll give them skills that other people don't have. Whenever I can.
That's good. So then how do you build these partnerships with organizations and schools to help you be on the campus, to get voter registration, to do things like that? Because I feel like you'd have to get licensing or something to get that authorized.
A lot of it is once you're a student club on campus, you're pretty much part of the university. And I mean, that's the biggest thing about universities, is that this is supposed to be this zone where you are experiencing, everything. And I think it's a selling point for universities too, where like, oh, we have those clubs, like if you want to get involved, right? And if those universities don't have those clubs, then I would suggest not going to them, because like you're not going to get a lot out of that university, right? And so I think it's something we have to offer to the university, and the university also offers to us, right?
So now that everything has been shifting to a virtual space, and then you get people to either work or volunteer to help you, how are you getting people that work with you to get others to register to vote in this virtual space? Because it's dangerous. There's a public pandemic going around, and people are afraid.
The greatest thing this is why I feel like it's the hardest thing for me ever to leave this job, is that when you're around college students, they're the most innovative people. They think of things that nobody else thinks of, and it's just the college culture, right? Like you always throwing out ideas, and that's what I love about education, is like it's a never ending moment. You're always learning. And so what we did is, as soon as this happened, we got our students together, and we're like, what are we going to do about this? Like, we have to register students to vote this year. We have to change some of these outcomes of these elections to benefit students. Like, what are we going to do about it? And we figured it out. And we were like, what we're going to do is we're going to jump on Zoom calls in classrooms, and we're going to tell people to register to vote. And then luckily the Secretary of State had already created some link where our organization could send out this link, and then students could register to vote online.
Nice.
And so we were just getting our students to get into their own classrooms on Zoom and say, hey, here's a link, register to vote. And that's what we did.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and we did that at NAU, ACU, U of A. And then from there, like, professors are like, they're like, oh, you're still doing something. And not only that, but in the state of Arizona, we were ahead of a lot of other nonprofits that do similar work that we do in terms of vote work. Nobody else was doing this. So we were pretty advanced, and it was working, and we still registered thousands of students in the state of Arizona.
That's good.
Yeah.
So then how are other people conducting elections in the midst of this public health emergency? Like getting people to register to vote, and how they're managing the polls. Do you know what other organizations are doing to help?
We're doing it too, and other organizations, I think they had to rely more on social media advertisement. So a lot of them just did ads. Also texting. We texted individuals, and we're like, hey, if you moved recently, make sure to update your voter registration form. Also send this link to your friends who are not registered to vote. Calling individuals, people will call people and be like, hey, are you registered to vote? Here's this link, make sure to vote, or check out our website. But yeah, and it was a total shift. I mean, and it's what I feel like it's with everything. The pandemic has affected everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been hard.
And this brings a good question. What has been the most challenging thing as far as getting people to vote and getting people involved, especially getting people to like do work with you?
Yeah, it's just at least in my field, it's when we were on campus register, like we would go on clipboard table, classrooms, and it was just like those random college conversations that you have with random people, by sitting on a bus stop or just walking or seeing a T-shirt or something, and it's that human interaction that makes a huge difference, right? Like once you make that connection with another individual,
Yeah.
the individual will register to vote. I feel like more based on the emotion that they've had with the conversation that you had with them,
Right.
because they feel more empowered.
Right.
And so I think that is the biggest challenge, is that emotional connection has been disconnected.
Right.
Yeah.
I feel like because that's a challenge trying to convince people to vote through a classroom online virtually, when they already, some of them don't even want to pay attention in class.
Yeah.
So what tactics has been successful in getting people registered to vote? I don't know if you can share any numbers of how many people you all registered for vote. To vote, I think I saw somewhere on your website it was like 300 in like a week. You got 300 college students registered to vote.
So this year, our goal was to register this year. I think it was like 18,000 students. We ended up getting closer to 9,000 students. So we were half of what we were supposed to get. And yeah, it's that was crazy in itself. But what happened in Arizona was that they had extended the voter registration deadline originally it went from October 3rd, or I think it was October 5th, to October 23rd, and then it got challenged in court. And then what happened was that the Secretary of State was like, you know what, we're not gonna extend it to October 23rd, we're gonna extend it to October 15th as a deadline. And it was, I guess, it had to do because it was going to be hard on the Secretary of State and the county recorders to be able to handle election stuff going on. And so, yeah, it's been a crazy year, and like deadlines have been changing.
So what are some mistakes you wish you would have avoided when you started working with ASA?
I don't really, no, I wouldn't say I have any. I'm like, for the most part, I think I've always like challenged myself in everything I do. Where like I know internally I've never wanted to do it, but I forced myself to do it. Like when I first got involved, I did not like talking or asking people if they were registered to vote. I was always like, I thought that was kind of like invasive. And like the more and more I did it, it just became normal. And I mean, I would do public speeches, and I hate public speaking, but I would just force myself to do it. So I'm like, till it becomes normal. So I'm like, I think, I wouldn't say like I have any, I just think I push myself to like buckle up, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. Just kind of throw yourself, take that leap and really just practice, because, I mean, there's nothing better than failure, or even, because it's funny. There's this funny thing about stocks where like, oh, you've never lost money until you pull it out if your stock is doing bad. Same way where like you've never failed until you stopped, until you just like give up. So I think that's kind of a good way to actually look at it, is like you've never really failed until you stop giving up, and now you're continuing to do it. So that's just a testament to your success. So what do you attribute your success to? Like, do you have mentors? Do you have, I don't know, a story or something that you can attribute your success to with working with ASA?
Yeah, I mean, I've worked with a lot of great leaders in different fields, from campaigning to vote work to management to entrepreneurs, and I've kind of just taken what I've seen be successful and just use it. Like one is, well, my dad too was like someone that I look at a lot too. Like that guy will fail. Like my dad's a straight business owner. He'll fail and fail and fail, and I've seen him as a business owner go so far where I'm like, this guy's not gonna make it out. Like this is gonna be crazy, and he gets back up and he's still going. And I think when you see that, you start realizing like as a human, like you don't know what low is until you've been low, and then like once you've gone low, and I think once you're there, you're like, every time after that, you're like, it could be worse, it could be worse. And then if it does get worse, then you'll be like, well, that was worse. So like, let's not do that again.
There's no other way than going up.
Yeah. And that movie, Sing, that cartoon movie, that's one of my favorite ones. Yeah, because that's what he says. He's like, there's the best thing about being down is the only way up. The only way is
to go up. Yeah.
And I'm like, and that guy, like that character, lost everything, right? But
are you talking about the gorilla?
The koala.
Yeah.
Yeah,
because he's starting his the theater place.
And that guy is the best like entrepreneur ever. Like he had this idea and he was gonna do whatever it took for him to get there, right? Even if he had to lie to these people that he had all this money and he had none of this money, but he was still going. And I think in a nonprofit it kind of goes like that too. It's like we're still gonna keep this going. We're still gonna keep this going, even if we don't have any money.
Yeah. So Cesar, I know you because you work during the election season more heavily. I want you to debunk any myths you have for us about voter registration, mail-in ballots, working at the polls, things like that has been brought up by the current administration, but also by a lot of things in the news. So tell us about different myths and things that are true and not true.
Yeah, so the biggest thing when it comes to voter registration, and I hear this all the time, is that I don't want to do jury duty. And this is the craziest thing ever because jury duty is like literally a fundamental right that Americans fought for, to be able to have due process. And I think it's crazy when people tell me they're not going to register to vote because they don't want to do jury duty. And I'm like, imagine having a judge, like without a jury, just handling all these cases and then sentencing all these people. And you not having citizens that are willing to partake in this system to like make it more equal for you.
Right.
And that just blows my mind. So like I always tell people like, oh, you like being American, right? Like this is a fundamental, right? Like come on.
Yeah.
That's like one thing that right off the bat makes me mad. Another thing that's just been going on this year, Trump being the president, talking about voting by mail, being corrupt, ballots are not going to get on, to be counted on time. Absolutely false. Postal service workers are doing everything they can to make sure to get your ballot there on time. On primary day, I was volunteering at one polling location and actually talked to a postal service guy, and he was like, hey, like what we're doing at the location that I'm working at is we're putting all these ballots aside and we're delivering them that day to the county recorder. And so a lot of what Trump was saying is just like not true. And then another thing that Trump decided to do is that he decided to give his base postage stamps, send them out and said, hey, use these postage stamps for your ballot. Well, it ends up turning out that your ballots are already like prepaid for.
Right.
And they're supposed to be paid for it to get there pretty fast. As soon as you put those stamps on there, it actually slows down the process now. Than what it was.
That's interesting. I don't even remember hearing about that.
Yeah,
they did postage stamps for mail-in ballots that already have that covered.
Yeah, and it was just like it's sad because it's like this is your own base. You're giving false information to, and the saddest thing for me is that you're limiting democracy for your own people.
So we're coming to the closing of this podcast. So I wanted to ask, what piece of advice would you give college graduates, young inspiring leaders and entrepreneurs who maybe want to start their own organization like ASA, or create a movement, or be in a position of power like how you are with the Balsz School District Board?
Yeah, so I come from like a Latinx family, right? Where if you're not getting paid, you're not doing something right? And you got a college degree, so you're supposed to be making all this money because they don't have a college degree.
Right.
And so it's the biggest thing that used to make me upset, because me as a first generation student, I want to make a huge difference in my community, right?
Mm.
And that meant the cost of what I was going to get paid, right? I was willing to not make a lot of money to help my own community.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like, well, I would always hear from my parents, like, oh, like a teacher, you're not going to make much money.
Yeah.
Like, oh, like nonprofit, you're not going to make much money. But I'm like, I would tell individuals to like ignore that voice. If you like what you want to do it 100%. Don't do it at half the pace, because the only thing you're doing is you're shortening yourself of what you what you like to do and what you could serve to the world, right? Mm-hmm. You could be that individual that makes a huge difference by starting a nonprofit, by creating something no one else did. And it's going to be at the cost of your free labor. Mm-hmm. And that's just it. And so that's what I would say. I would say ignore a lot of what your parents are going to tell you not to do. Mm-hmm. And if you love doing something, do it 100%.
Any books or resources that students should look into? And definitely want you to bring up resources about grants, that maybe websites that you look at. But any books or resources that people should look into if they want to get into this field?
Yeah. I mean, if you're a college student, you can definitely check out our website at azstudents.org, and you can get involved through there. Send us your email and sign up on our website. There are a bunch of nonprofits in Arizona. You can easily Google nonprofits, whatever issue you're looking at in Arizona, and you'll find one. And if you want to get involved politically, I mean, it depends what kind of issue you're looking at. Does your issue involve city? Like, do you care about, trash issues? Look at the city of Phoenix. If you care about water rights, look at the Arizona Water Board. If you like education, mm-hmm. Go to your legislature and Google, who's my legislator. Google them, mm-hmm. find their email, phone number, call them and say, hey, I want to get involved, I want to do something.
Right.
And they'll connect you easily.
Yeah, they're always looking for volunteers.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So that is a great way to get involved in local elections. And then I think the last one I think you forgot to mention was, how about grants? Like, what could people do if they already have an organization, maybe, when they're looking for grants? What resources do you have?
Google. You can Google everything. But one for sure is Arizona Community Foundation, huge organization in Arizona that gives a lot of money.
Yes.
Yeah, they're like whoever has money to give out in Arizona, usually they'll go to that organization. That organization posts it on their website, and they have like people who constantly are applying. And a lot of it is just networking. Get involved in an organization that you see is doing the work that you're doing, and ask them like, hey, I want to be you. I want to mentor. I want to be your mentee. Show me your ways, master. And then they'll be like, yes, young
Master Kenobi.
Skywalker. I'll show you.
Master Kenobi.
And yeah, in nonprofit world, we're always looking for that young apprentice.
Yeah. So then anything else I should have asked, or any last things that you want to tell our audience members before we close off?
Yeah, make sure to vote November 3rd. Also, there are early voting locations. If you need, you can look at our website, azstudents.org, and we have some of that information on there. If you have your mail-in ballot, make sure to turn that in. 18 to 18 and 30-year-olds are like not turning in their ballots right now where we need them to, so we need them to step that up and go out and vote early. We don't want to have long lines on election day.
Yeah, that is very true. So remember, everybody, go out there and vote. It's a great opportunity for you to really get in part of this election process. Thank you again, Cesar, for being on this podcast. I appreciate it. And then thank you, listeners, for tuning in. Have a wonderful day.